the support of Barcelona City Council, the Catalan Development Cooperation Agency, Pangea. We want to also greet those of you who are following us online. We think the system is up and running. And we'd like to remind everyone who is with us online that they can send their questions via the chat, and we will pick up on the question depending on how we do on time. We'll try answering some of these questions, and also for the public here in the room, at the end of each session, we will be collecting your questions. I'm Agus Morales. I'm a journalist. I'm the director of the newspaper 5Ws. I'll be with you between now and 9 p.m. Barcelona time, guiding you through the session. And I'm especially happy to have been invited to this edition of Mobile Social Congress. I also feel very close to Mobile Social Congress because when we present our issue where we include photographs, it always coincides with the Mobile World Congress. Anyway, as you know, the Mobile Social Congress is a project aiming to create a point to meet and share thoughts on how we produce and consume technology. And it's open to all citizens. This year marks our 9th edition, and the topic is hacking the system, building resistance. So we have 4 sessions today. Throughout these 4 sessions, we will be touching on different themes. In the first session, it's barriers and trade union struggles in the tech industry. Then in the second block, certifying products as a means to address the environmental and social impacts of electronics. Then there'll be another block hearing from firsthand from territories where the mining activities for the electronic industry. And fourthly, the relationship between tech industries, surveillance and occupation, and the genocide of the Palestinian people. That will be at the end. So we have simultaneous interpretation in Catalan, Spanish, and English. For those of you who are in the public and for those following us online, you can all access the interpretation. And to select the language of your choice, you can select it from Zoom or from the devices for those in the room. So without further ado, I will be asking our panelists to try sticking to the time allocated. We will hear from many different people and we'll do whatever is in our hands to answer your questions, but maybe we won't have time to answer all of your questions. It's an open space, and I'm sure today we will hear many interesting opinions and information. So let's get started. The first block, barriers and union struggles, testimonials and realities in the electronic sector. Initially, we were going to have 3 people participating. At the end, it will be 2, and I'll explain why. First, to my left is Jeroen. Did I pronounce your name right? Jeroen Merk. He's a researcher at SOMO. SOMO is an international research organization specializing in supply chains in clothing, electronics, and mining. He's worked as the coordinator for research at the Clean Clothes Campaign, which is a really interesting initiative. It's an initiative defending labor rights. We also have, following us online, Prihanani Boenadi, who is the Vice President of the Indonesian Metalworkers Union with a long experience defending labor rights, working to strengthen the union movement in her country and globally. And last but not least, we were going to have Marianne Castillo, who is going to be with us, who is the Secretary General of the steel unions in the Philippines, and she isn't with us because they're negotiating with the employers. They're on strike, and that is why she wasn't able to come, because she's doing an important job. She's leading a union of an association of non-unionized workers, and we wish her all the best. Nevertheless, we have a very interesting panel with Jeroen and Prihanani. So let's give the floor to our experts and to hear witness from them firsthand. And first, I'll give the floor to Jeroen so that he can tell us about a report that has recently been launched on barriers to unionism. No Union, No Voice is the name of the report. No Union, No Voice, 9 ways in which labor rights are violated in the electronics industries. So I'll give the floor next to Jeroen to tell us about this report and why it is important. Jeroen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, Sitem. It's great to be here. It's the second time I've visited this congress. That's really amazing. So can you put up my slides?
Tenim una presentació.
So I work at the SOMO, that's the Center for Research on Multinational Corporations. We carry out action-oriented research to expose the impact of and power of multinationals. One back. Yes, thank you. And we have been sort of working on multinationals on everything that can impact in a negative way on labor rights, on tax evasion, on let's say investing in countries where you should not invest, etc. since 1973. And I'm also, next slide, please. I'm also the coordinator of the Good Electronics Network, which is hosted by SOMO, which is a network of around 100 organizations, NGOs, trade unions, mostly active in the electronics industry. And it advocates for human rights, sustainability and labor rights, but also not just in manufacturing, also in mining and in recycling. So some organizations focus on manufacturing and trade unions, others focus on mining and sustainable consumption, etc. And we do this with, we do campaigns, information exchange within the network, worker trainings, and we have done a lot of research reports over the last decade on parts of the supply chain, and also highlighting, let's say, the corporations like Foxconn, Apple, Samsung, etc. And we also engage with the industry, try to push them to adopt higher standards. Next slide. So one of the things that is maybe most important for at least the trade union members of the network is the right to organize, freedom of association and collective bargaining, which are both the bedrocks of labor rights, right? They are enabling rights that make it possible for workers to monitor and impact the conditions in which they work. They are part of the ILO, the International Labour Organization. They are part of core conventions. They are part of the UN human rights instruments, and they're often, in most cases, also part of the constitutional rights of countries. So they are widely recognized as key rights, and yet highly violated. They're called enabling rights because if workers have the right to organize and to step up and voice their grievances, they have the possibility to monitor their own workplaces. So they are not dependent on labor inspectors that might come every 5 years or not at all. They're not dependent on social auditors from brands. They can directly intervene when something happens. They can stop the production process if it's unsafe, and they can lobby or pressure management to adopt better standards. And not just on the workplace, also nationally. Trade unions play a key role in establishing the right conditions, the decent conditions for work to happen. Next slide, please. Yeah, there is a huge representation gap in the electronics industry. Decades of outsourcing and precarious work practices, union hostility, and inadequate government protection have really undermined the right to organize for most workers. Governments fail in their duty to protect, and corporations fail in their duty or in their responsibility to respect. So the right to organize is often seen as a negative and a positive right. The state should not intervene in union affairs. They should leave workers alone if they want to organize, should not arrest them, should not harass them, should not discriminate them, should not put them in jail, should not murder them. Right? So that is the negative side of it. They should stay away and leave workers the space to organize. At the same time, it's also a positive right. For this to happen, the government must implement all kinds of mechanisms that makes it possible for workers to organize, to step up towards their employer. So they must ensure that there are legal remedies if the employer discriminates. They must establish institutions that support collective bargaining. And they should help with conflict resolution. And corporations, in turn, they must respect workers' right to organize and bargain, even if governments fail to do so. So this means avoiding anti-union practices. Do not dismiss workers, blacklist them, demote them, etc., but create an environment in which workers can freely organize and engage in good faith collective bargaining. So the report, the nine ways the electronics industry cracks down on labor rights, which you can download by using the QR code, basically shows 9 different ways, systematic ways that makes it very difficult in the industry for workers to exercise the right to organize. And the way the report is structured is that 7 chapters are based around countries and discuss different topics related to that country. So I highlight, for example, precarious work in the context of Indonesia, violence in the context of the Philippines. So we highlight one particular item in those countries, but of course, most workers face multiple barriers in a country. So precarious work is also a huge item in the Philippines. And then besides the 7 country studies, there are 2 more general chapters on the structure of the industry. Next slide. So if you first look at where are most of the workers in this industry, and the industry ILO report from 2024 calculated that there are 17.4 million workers in the industry. 78% of them, about 13.5 million, are based in Asia. China alone has 7.7 million workers in the industry. So it's very clear that, let's say, the decades of outsourcing and globalization has resulted in a shift of the work, at least, most of the work to Asia. And it's also a very gendered industry. In Asia, women workers represent over 60% of the workforce, according to the ILO report. Next slide. And yet, so while most workers are based in Asia, the industry is still very much dominated by companies from the US. So you can. I took here from the Forbes Global 2000, which is a yearly ranking of the 2000 largest companies worldwide, not just in electronics, but in all sectors. They in that ranking, 91 companies are categorized as electronics companies or semiconductor companies. And out of that, 31 US companies represent about almost 70% of profits and over 70% of market value. So it's still an industry, although most of the work happens in Asia, it's still pretty much dominated by companies from the US. And Apple alone represents 15% of sales, 37% of total profits, and 26% of total market value. This is total market value of the 91 companies combined, right? So it's not from the whole industry, but from the selection of companies in the Forbes Global 2000. So US companies dominate, but at the same time, we should not sort of argue that it's just US companies. There are also still many companies from Taiwan, South Korea, and increasingly China that are becoming very big multinationals. So these countries, although they look very small in this graph, they are still pretty important. Next slide. So while the industry is increasingly monopolized and consolidated within a small number of companies operating transnationally through global supply chains, the report argues that this is the first barrier. So it fragments labor forces across many countries, and it puts governments into competition with one another to attract investments. And governments dependent on businesses for jobs and tax revenue face huge pressure to prioritize capital growth, often by influencing labor policies and working conditions in a negative way. So I think we will hear from my sister Prihanani, who's later in the panel, how, for example, the omnibus law they are implementing is a way to attract capital, but comes with a great cost for labor. So these companies are in a position to put the different countries into competition with one another, and you can see this with the wage levels in the graph. So and this is a bit of a, when wages go higher than $500 a month, companies start searching for a new place to go. So this makes it very difficult to improve conditions, because if you get a strong union and you press for higher wages, when you are successful, you threaten, let's say, the future of the industry in your country. And that makes it very difficult to achieve long-term success. Next slide. So the second barrier that I discuss in the report is the Silicon Valley anti-union model. Since the US companies dominate so much the industry, and that the industry started in the US in the 1950s, they have made a kind of anti-union strategy, or they have been a laboratory of keeping unions out. So from the very first moment, the industry didn't start in the Silicon Valley, they moved there because it was not unionized. And so relocation was from the very start a very important incentive to avoid unions. A second strategy is is intimidation. When workers try to organize, and they often tried, they were facing corporate anti-union strategies, often based on fear. So people were threatened with dismissal, and there was all kinds of surveillance. And overall, it created a climate of fear that makes it very difficult for unions to succeed. And in the very few cases that unions did succeed, factories were shut down and relocated to Asia. 5 minutes, okay. So they also used a precarious work model based on migrant workers, mostly from the Philippines and Mexico, that were working in those factories. And then finally, for a small group of highly educated workers, there was a substitution strategy. So they got better payment, but had sort of the promise that to stay out of the union. And we can see this model. If you go research in different countries, you can see elements of this model coming back in many other countries. So next slide. The third barrier is then state monopoly on trade unions. And China is here the main example. Simply no independent unions are allowed outside the one that is sanctioned by the state. And of course in China, because most of the workers are there, this has a huge impact. And it means that most workers remain unrepresented by a genuine union, one that they endorse. At the same time, there is a lot of protest. China Labor Watch, they have a strike map. And there last year, most of the strikes, the wildcat strikes, not officially sanctioned by the trade union, took place in the electronics industry because there is a lot of relocation going on, also because of geopolitics and trade war. And that leaves many workers without wages and without their pension funds and those kind of things. So there's a lot of resistance at the moment in China. But it takes place outside an official union. Next slide. Then there are a number of countries where trade union rights are officially recognized, but the state intervenes in many different ways to keep unions, make unions very difficult to operate in practice. And Malaysia is a key example. So from the 1970s, this was the country where most companies of the US companies moved first, maybe except for Hong Kong. They went to Malaysia and they had a lot of influence on the labor protections in that country, keeping unions out for a long time, and slowly unions get some recognition. And last year, finally, they were able to organize on a national level. But still the situation is there extremely difficult. A fourth barrier that I was not expected to talk about this but that's the Philippines, where violence, state-sanctioned violence, is impeding workers to organize. And there's a lot of political repression, like red tagging, that you are accused of being a member of a violent...
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm the bad guy.
Okay, so there is also state violence, and you can read the report. Mexico, ghost unions. So another problem that many workers face is that there is a fake union. Not only in Mexico, but in many other countries, the employer basically establishes a union, and that is a way to keep genuine unions out. Then Indonesia, that I will leave that for the next speaker, but precarious work. If you're always on a short-term contract, and over 50% of the electronics workers are on short-term contracts, it's very difficult to join a union. Then many parts of the industry rely on migrant workers. Malaysia, Taiwan, Hungary, many other parts, and they face a specific set of problems when they try to organize. Often they have a contract that ties them to a specific employer, makes them extremely dependent on them. And then there are issues with debt bondage and forced labor, basically. And then finally,
Okay.
Next slide, sorry. No, next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yes. Next one. So brand hypocrisy. That many of the companies that dominate these industries, they have adopted codes of conduct that include freedom of association, but it's very they do not really implement them. So basically, in their own factories, they repress, and workplaces, they repress unions, and it's very the methods they use to monitor factories also is so weak on freedom of association, and most importantly, maybe they refuse any kind of social dialogue. Of most of them refuse any kind of social dialogue with the global union representing workers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will, seguim. Ara tenim a la Prihanani
We
Boenadi.
will continue with Prihanani. As she said, she's the Vice President of the International Department of the Federation of Indonesian Metalworkers, and I'm sure she'll use the acronym FSPMI in English. And she will tell us about the role of this federation, how workers can join unions in the electronic sector, and the challenges that workers on a temporary contract face compared to fixed-term contracts. We have her online, so if you can hear me, Prihanani, and you are ready, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, and good evening, brothers and sisters. Evening means Indonesia time, because now already 11:30 in Jakarta. Let me introduce myself. My name is Prihanani. I'm Vice President for the International Department of the Indonesia Metalworkers Union, that based in Jakarta. Thank you very much, Jeroen, for the explanation about the Indonesia. You know very much about the electronic sector around the world, including Indonesia. So you already well spoke about the condition. And thank you very much for all of the STEM colleagues that inviting me to this very interesting discussion, because this is my first time become the speaker in this group. So I'm very happy to be here. The first slide is about the picture of our building. This is our office building located in Jakarta. Next slide, please. Yeah, before we discuss about the SPMI and also what we do in relation with the trade union, let me introduce Indonesia. We have the population is very huge population. We have 278.8 million people, with the labor force is about 149. And the working people is about 2.18 million. And the unemployment rate right now was 4.86%, but about 60% of them are in the informal sector. So in the formal sector is only about 40%. And FSPMI organized the formal sector only. Next, please. This is the membership map of KSPI. KSPI is the confederation where the SPME affiliate to, and mostly the members of KSPI is FSPMI members. Now we have 38 provinces in Indonesia, and we are in the 32 province of Indonesia. In the picture, you can see the red color is means we have 5 until 8 federation or branch level office members in that area, and the green 2 until 4 members in that area, and another another green is about 1 federation in that area. We already covered almost in all of islands of Indonesia. Next. And what is SPMI? SPMI is, as I mentioned and Jeroen mentioned before, Federation of Indonesia Metalworkers Union. We have 7 affiliate sector. The biggest one is in the electronic sector. We have 60,513 members in the electronic sector, and about 30% of them are women. What is about the total members? We have 139,350,000 members, and the 1,151 union. It means a company, because the membership of the FSPMI is by the company, and also the CBA. We have 450 CBAs in the company. CBA is a collective bargaining agreement between the union and also with the company level. You can imagine in 1,150 company, we only have 450 collective bargaining agreement. It's very less. So we have annual target to increasing the number of the CBA. But actually now it's not easy to have the new CBA in the new company, because the government regulation in the omnibus law, this is not easy for us to have or increase the number of CBA. Next, please. How about the electronic sector? In the electronic sector, many challenges have already discussed before with Jeroen, but I need to explain more. Now, not easy to organize the workers in the smaller company, especially in the supply chains, because they are afraid about their contract life of in the company. Mostly in the supply chains company, they use contract workers. And the second is about the different area with the different wages. In Indonesia, we have the unique minimum wage. In every area, we have different minimum wage. And the gap between the central area or the city center area and in the rural area, it's very huge. For example, in Jakarta is about 5 million. But in Central Java, still in the same island, we have only in average 2.5 million Indonesia rupiah. The gap is very huge. And you can imagine when we working in the supply chain company, the production output is same. For example, when we produce the electronic goods, for example, mobile phone. The price of mobile phone is in the market is the same. And the price of the component of the mobile phone, like the semiconductor price, is also the same. But the wages of the workers is different. Number 3 is about the close down the company competition with the China product. The price from the China is lower than local production. And now we are facing the close down of the company. For example, today, we are now still discuss about the dismissal for the Yamaha music company in Indonesia. They will close down the half of the department, and the leader of the Yamaha company has dismissed since a week ago. Why? Because during the discuss about the minimum wage, bipartite discussion about the minimum wage in the company, and the members of the union or the workers of the Yamaha company wait for the discussion in front of the company. And then because of the rule that make the company was very crowded, and then the leader of the trade union was dismissed because the company said, you make the crowded area in my location. And now we still discuss to the company to withdraw the dismissal of the trade union leader. But they use a lawyer and also police in front of the gate of the company, and we could not entrance the company area. And then the relocation, because of the minimum wage difference between province by province, and then they move to another province with the lower minimum wage. And you can imagine with the new area, it's not easy to form the union, to invite them to join the union because they are afraid to dismiss because join the trade union. What is the opportunities? The Indonesia government have the free trade agreement with the another country, so this is also the opportunities. The second one, our government also have the scaling in initiative of the workers, pre-workers, for example, for the students and also the university student. They form a training center from the government, and then they could learn in the company to up the skill of the student, become the ready workers with the full skill after learn in the company. But unfortunately, they also working follow the working hours from 7 to 4 p.m. without any salary or any pocket money. It means free workers student. This is also happen in Indonesia. And it's a part, it's not the part of the opportunities, but also the challenge for the trade union. The last one is the tax incentive for the company. So the company could have lower tax from the government, but this is not good, not good news, or not cannot applicable well for the movement of the trade union. No impact for the trade union movement, I mean. Next, please.
You have 5 more minutes, Prihanani.
When we discuss about the difference between the permanent workers and the contract workers. Actually, in Indonesia, we have three types of the workers. The first one is permanent workers. Second one is contract workers. And the third one, the very terrible status is about the outsourcing workers. The contract workers don't have any limitation for the duration of the work. For example, we have retirement law is about 55 years old age. And then for the contract workers, mostly the lack of the job security because the contracts maximum duration only 5 years. This is in the omnibus law. And the social security, mostly in the supply chain company, the company refused to pay the social security, for example, for the health insurance, pension fund, and so on. And because of the limitation of the contract, actually the contract is not directly 5 years, but some company only contract them based on the needs of the company. For example, some company only contract them every 3 months. You can imagine in every 3 months, and the end of the contract, they always afraid about the continuously for their contract. So no job security at all. Because of that, they are afraid to join the union because when the company recognize the workers join the union, they will stop the contract. And also the penalty when the workers have the contract, for example, 1 year, and suddenly they could find another better job. And when they resign from the company, they should pay the penalty the rest of the contract. For example, when they have a 10 months or 1 year contract, and they just use the contract for 5 months, and the rest, it means 7 months, they should pay when they resign before the contract end. This is very, very terrible in the condition of the, especially in the supply chains company. But unfortunately, not only in the supply chains company, but also in the multinational company. For example, in the Epson Indonesia. Epson Indonesia is affiliate to FSPMI. Total workers of Epson Indonesia is about 7,000. And 40% of them are contract workers. 30% of them are outsourcing workers, and the rest are the permanent workers.
2 minutes.
So, what is the difference between outsourcing workers and the contract workers? The outsourcing workers don't have a direct relation with the company. The relation is only between the workers and the labor supplier. And the labor supplier have do not have direct contact with the company because mostly they hired by the cooperative in the company. Of course, they don't have no social security coverage, and of course, during the agreement, they do not allow to join the union. But actually, we already have the success story when we campaign for the union, join the union, but it's a long time ago, about 2027. We could invite the outsourcing workers become members the union, and then change the change the status from the outsourcing workers become the permanent workers. This is our victory before the omnibus law, of course. And now we have to struggling more and more to include them in our target of the campaign. Next, please. Discuss about the migrant workers. Actually, I don't have any experience in the migrant workers because Indonesia is the sending country of the migrant workers. Mostly in the domestic workers area, but some of them also in the electronic company and the plantation and the care workers, and mostly they are in Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. But for the domestic workers, mostly in the Arab area.
Gracias.
And the total of the migrant workers from Indonesia, about 4.5 million, and 3.1 are women. So the women only workers in the domestic area because they have limited skill to working outside in the domestic area. Next.
Thank you, Prihanani. Thank you very much because, sorry, we are running out of time.
Next, please.
Hola, non-sen.
Can you hear me? I need the next slide.
No sé aquí. Non-sen. Ya, tampoco.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now, Boenadi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I think we ran out of time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's
so I
Ramadan,
will.
right?
Can you hear me? Hello.
Faig en anglès. Okay. Okay. Prihanani, thank you very much for being with us because I believe that it's 1 a.m. In Indonesia. So thank you very much. It's very interesting all that you explained to us. All these many countries in Asia, especially like Indonesia and all around, they have all this also this informal sector, and of course workers are in a difficult situation. Also, I was saying before, I don't know if you heard me, but Ramadan Mubarak, and we have 5 minutes. I don't know if I should keep in English. Should I get going in English? Yes, okay. We have 5 minutes for questions from the audience online and also from the audience here. You can address your question to both of the panelists.
May I have 5 minutes more to explain about the omnibus law?
Sorry, but we don't have 5 minutes. Actually, we have to finish in 5 minutes, and there's people here, they might ask you something here in the audience.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you, it was very interesting.
Yes, hello, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask a question, but maybe I can change my question and ask you about the omnibus law.
Can you hear the question? No.
Yes, but not so clear.
Again.
She asked about the omnibus law. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you a different question, but as you just said it, if you can say something about the omnibus law.
Okay. May I use my screen in the omnibus law?
Yes. Go ahead. So go ahead. Yes. Go ahead, Prihanani.
Okay, thank you. Next, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, this is the omnibus law. omnibus law, the title of omnibus law is about the job creation law in Indonesia, but actually not created the job. And it consists of the 11 cluster, and the cluster of the employment is number 3. And another important cluster is the last one, number 11, about the economic zone. Next.
Yeah.
This is the history of the omnibus law. The government first announced in 2019, and then refused by all of the civil society in Indonesia. And then we applied the judicial review in February 21. In November 21, the Constitutional Court said that omnibus law was unconstitutional. And then the government have 2 years to revise the law. But suddenly, just in December 22, the government issued the new regulation, government regulation in the lieu of law. Actually, the lieu of law should be issued when the country in the danger, some danger issue, but it's not danger at all, but the government issued in the lieu of law.
I'm sorry, can I just jump in and relate it to the question I was going to ask you?
Okay, please.
My name is Carla Canal. I work in the Barcelona City Council, also with people of procurement, buying, like, and we work with Electronics Watch when we buy computers. And so I wanted to ask you, we had some meetings with TCO, and because they were not able to provide us with the traceability information, we asked in our contract, we ask, where are these phones and computers made? So they have to provide the name of the fabric in Indonesia or wherever. And they told us that they couldn't because they are constantly changing the locations of so they don't know if in 2 weeks or 3 weeks they will buy from another, or in less than 1 month they will buy from another country, that it's better, it's cheaper. So that they were constantly changing the provision. So I wanted to ask you 2 questions. It's that, how does this supposedly volatility of people that are buying impact in your work? I mean, as people is being hired or not hired. I mean, I know the maximum is 5 years, but so how is this impacting? And also, if you as a trade union or as a worker, you have the information of who is buying your components. So it means that or the brand or the final consumer, that if it is a public administration, they should be able, they have the duty to comply with all the international labor laws, etc. So the question is this: if the people that is buying in the factories, if they change, and if you know who is buying, so if you can address them directly if a violation is in your
After this answer, we need to finish right away. Thank you.
Actually, I do not understand about your question. Who is buying the product, or how?
Yeah, if you know who is buying the product.
Who is buying the product?
If you know, and if you can address them directly to complain. Because you can complain to the factory, but you can also complain to the buyers, I mean, to the trade or to the final consumers, more if it's a public administration. I mean, if you have this information, either as a worker or as a trade union, if you have the information of who is in the other side of the supply chain, so you can directly denounce any violations.
Okay.
Or any bad situation.
Actually, we can discuss by email maybe for the deep communication, because
Good. It's a good. It's a excellent, excellent. I'm very sorry because we have I have a news from here. They're telling me we have a Prihanani. We have a special video from the Philippines. Marianne Castillo is sending us a video that she was not able to be here, but we will be able to watch her, and we will finish this panel. Thank you everyone for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Després d'aquest bloc, que ja acabem amb aquest vídeo, farem una entrevista amb la... per cert, el Jeroen s'ha quedat sense contestar preguntes, no n'hi havia més, però...
There were no more questions, but during after 9 p.m. we'll have something to eat outside and you can ask our questions if you want.
Com sabeu, us recordo, la Mariana és presidenta del Sindicat de Treballadors de Nexperia i secretària general de l'Aliança de Treballadors de
Mariana is from the Philippines, and Marianne was going to intervene online. I think it's interesting because I think we have witnesses and stories coming from Indonesia and Philippines that are two key countries in Asia, where we also see how the state is conniving with corporations and adopt regulations that make it even more difficult for workers to join unions in the electronic sector and in other sectors too. I'd be curious to know, with the video sent by Marianne, what actions they're doing in the Philippines. So let's watch the video and see what it tells us.
Tracta d'un vídeo de molts megabytes, però podem...
It's quite a heavy video. Okay, the good news I have for you all is that we're doing okay for time right now. So if you agree, we can continue, and we'll now speak with Chiara Scalabrino, who I guess will come up and join me here at the table. Hi everyone, this is Chiara speaking. So we have... So welcome, Chiara. We'll give you 25 minutes for the interview, and then again we'll leave 5 minutes at the end for questions from the audience. And I'd also encourage people following us online to post their questions. Let me introduce Chiara. She has a degree in environmental science, and since the year 2000, she has been focusing on sustainable consumption and production. And she works for TCO Development, which focuses on companies that want to contribute to a more sustainable production through the TCO Certified label. It's for sustainable purchases of electronic devices. So, Chiara, welcome. And I think the first question I have for you, can you please tell us what this TCO Certified Eco label is and how was it first conceived? Well, I don't understand Catalan super well, but I understood your question. So TCO Certified label was created in 2002 because there were some Swedish workers who, at the time they had desktop computers and they had problems with the screens. They went to the company didn't take any notice of them. So at the end, they went to the union called TCO, and that is why the label bears the name. And it was a workers' union, and they started to study this, and that is how the certified label created. And in 30 years, it's developed into an eco label for sustainable production because it's backed with social criteria. So that's to tell you what the TCO certified products are. It's guided towards public procurement in organizations and public administrations because it allows you, without having to be an expert and without having a verification system and without the need to have a verification system, to purchase in a more sustainable way without having to invest a huge amount of financial and human resources. And maybe later I can go into more details. Yes, it's a label, right? It's like a certification. What are the criteria to grant this label? Well, it's a label that sometimes is put on the desktop computer or on the screen. Sometimes it's included in the software. And the criteria behind this label, there are many, covering areas of climate, circularity, supply chain, environmental aspects and social aspects, and chemical substances. Just to give you an example, talking of circularity, it's very important to make these devices last longer. If they last longer, it'll mean fewer electronic waste, less greenhouse gas emissions with a lower impact on climate and extreme events that have environmental, social, and economic consequences. The mobile devices need to be tested to ensure the battery is durable, it lasts long, so that if they fall, they can resist high temperatures. For the climate aspect, there are a whole series of requirements on energy management in the final assembly line. For new generation devices, they are required to have use a percentage of renewable energy. I'm summarizing a lot, but it's to give you an idea of the supply chain. Until now, we've talked more about social aspects. So there's another very important criteria, and that is that there must be a maximum of 60 hours a week work with 1 day off in the final assembly line. We've been working for this for 30 years. And we also have the audits to identify non-compliances over the course of 1 or 2 years, with the pressure from the brands using these factories to manufacture their products, or also by the CEO development that's developing this TCO certified label. At the end, we want to get workers to work no longer than 60 hours a week, including extra time. The numbers are small, obviously, compared to what our colleague from SOMO was saying. But just to give you a general idea, you were also talking about audits and how to certify a product. I think from what you described, it's a slow and costly process, and it's a rapidly evolving field. So how do you do the audits? Well, it depends on the criteria. On the battery life tests, it has to be done by certified laboratories. For social audits, these social audits must be done by senior auditors, an SA 8000 auditor, or an RBA, which is the high-level industry. And on top of that, besides being a senior auditor, which ensures a better audit, and they're able to cross many data to see whether they're telling the truth or not with independent interviews. After 2 years, you can see improvements. But we initially identified many non-compliances. And this is something that isn't done in the big industries. They are not obliged to specify the corrective measures when a non-compliance is identified. So to have the label of certification, I mean, there are many criteria behind this, but they are obliged to describe the corrective measures and to implement these measures. And every 2 or 3 years, there's a new audit depending on the risk level of the final assembly point, and they check everything again, and they continue until the product is certified. There's an ongoing control in the factory. So let's say if the factory is certified and it has an SA8000 certification, then we, well, not we ourselves, but the independent verifying company checks every 3 years. If they don't have a SA8000 certification, then these checks are done every 2 years. So we've taken 30 years first to identify the final assembly points. It's not always easy to identify these final assembly points. We only have an accepted factory list, which is a list of factories that have joined this or commitment to go through an audit, to have an environmental energy assessment plan, anti-bribery and anti-corruption plans, another plan on chemical substances. No, tell us more. What could you give us examples of certified products? Well, there are 3 areas, and this is something I thought of while listening to the previous speakers. This certification is specifically for electronic products used in offices, desktops, laptops, netbooks, screens, and then smartphones, beamers, headsets, everything that could be used in an office. Obviously, the largest number of certified products is what public administrations have been doing thanks to the European Commission and the European regulations, that is not only focusing on the price, but also on the quality. And thanks to these EU regulations, we started off by screens, and today 50% of the screen models are certified. 30% of desktops are certified. Those were the first that the public administrations asked for with the label, then notebooks. And there's been a huge leap in certification after the pandemic, because before public administrations didn't ask for laptops that much in the public administration. So what we see is that without demand, there'll be no supply. For instance, with smartphones, we only have one which is certified, Fairphone. It was a pioneering company in including social aspects and environmental aspects. We also had other certified smartphones, but some of them we've withdrawn the certification because they didn't pass the first, second, third year control audits. So we only have one model that is certified. That is to say that unless there's a big demand, producers are not interested in producing something. That is why we've had these problems for such a long time and made such little progress. In this regards, what would you say to consumers besides looking for the TCO label? What would be your message for consumers? Well, we don't target consumers directly because figures are important in the industry, which is a hugely globalized one. but we have a product finder on our website where you can find all of the certified models. You can look for them and then you can buy the certified model. Any citizen can do this, but then, of course, citizens are also workers, you know, if they are adults, they may be working for public administration or a private company, and every individual or citizen can try going to the office and speaking to those who take decisions on procurement and let them know of the availability of certified electronics, especially if it's a private company. We've started working with private companies and they very often companies do not know that much about e-certificates, you know. I mean, citizens are well aware of the existence of eco labels backed by an ISO norm, but it's important that everyone can make the eco labels known in private companies for the industry to change. So I see on the website you have concrete brands, many well-known brands, yes. To be sure that a certain model or brand is certified, you can check by each, and the control is done by the user can go in the product finder. If there's public procurement, you can ask for the company if it has a certification, or you can use the product finder. One thing that surprised me was that you only have the Fairphone as a smartphone, but when it comes to laptops, there are many that have been certified. Yes, I mean, the screen, we started 30 years ago with screens, desktops, then notebooks, and after the pandemic, we started certifying very few tablets and a few beamers. For some years, we had some servers, but if there's no demand, I mean, there are companies that have certified servers and they haven't renewed their certification because there was no demand from the buyers for their servers. What would you say is an eco label like this can change market practices? What are you doing to grow the eco label? Well, I've been in TCO development for 3 years now, and I started in 2004 and 2005 giving workshops in high school, starting off with mobile devices, because mobile devices, you know, young people use smartphones a lot. So I've seen the evolution up until now. It's been step by step, and we need to speed up, of course. But when I see what TCO Certified has done and everything that's behind, and like this year, I think among all the final assembly factories, we have more than 223,000 workers who work maximum 60 hours a week. It's a very small proportion of the whole number of workers in the electronics sector, goes beyond office hardware, of course. It's a small proportion, but that is what we have achieved, and it's an important achievement also. We have a whole series of criteria on alternative chemical substances. I mean, in Europe, we have many regulations that prohibit certain chemicals, but these rules do not apply to the rest of the world. Very often, these chemicals are replaced by another chemical that may be even more dangerous. Among the 350,000 chemicals on the market, I think only 1% of these have been tested to see if they could be harmful for the environment or for people's health. For plastifiers or flame retardants, for instance, or for final cleaning products at the end of the assembly line where workers are in contact, we want them to be replaced by tested products. We have a list of 70 chemicals on the list that have been certified. There are 40 that are candidates. So from the industry, they can also take a look at this list to replace the substances they use. The carbon footprint, for instance, the carbon footprint of a product. I mean, there's CO2, But one thing is the energy, usual energy consumption. Many look at this, but most of the emissions come from the whole production stage, from the minerals are extracted until you get the desktop on your table. 60 or 70% of emissions happen before the device reaches your office table. We've reached the conclusion it's difficult to calculate because you cannot compare the carbon footprint of a product because the supply chain is so complex. There are so many data that can be used and different methods. It's very difficult to compare the carbon footprint of different products, but what we are doing is increasing the lifespan of these products. In some years, we want to be able to use these electronics for 10 or 12 years, and now we're in the 10th generation of the labels, and producers must guarantee a useful life of at least 5 years. Well, that's great. I mean, we have this planned obsolescence, and yes, I mean, corporations are changing their mindset because the only way of bringing down the emissions corresponding to the production stage is by extending their life. These are just some of the achievements, but there are many more. It's a very systematic certification. So in conclusion, this eco label, do companies actively look for these eco labels? Do they see the eco label as something that can be positive for them? Or is it more you going out to reach out to companies? Because it's also indicative of where we stand. Well, as I was saying before, the public administration till now is the only one that has been looking for more sustainably produced products. More or less, depending on the country, of course, we live in a globalized world. There's a big difference between North and Southern Europe. Some local administrations include specific bidding criteria and specify the need for an eco label, others don't. I'd say, generally speaking, the public administrations have done much more. And in the private sector, in this last year or two, we've talked to many private companies, and they don't even know what an eco label is. When we talk to them of certifications, they think that they have to certify. They haven't taken this on board as much as the public administrations have. So this is something we have to push. But I think the companies know and realize that if they want to participate in public procurement, they're required to have an eco label. They have this on board. Well, it's one of the good things of this. And now, if you agree, if you want to make comments or questions, also for those following us online, I'd like to ask you, what are the future challenges you've set? Where is this TCO certification going? Well, I mean, it's all moved by demand, right? If there's no culture of sustainability, if there's no awareness, it won't progress. We have large administrations, and these type of events are also important to make the label well, the culture of awareness and training too. I mean, there are many technical aspects, attempts at doing it alone, but it's very difficult. The TCO certified team has been working for 30 years and is in direct contact with different players from the procurement, and they've had to push them to move forward. This year, we've set out a roadmap where, in order to prepare the industry to make improvements in the future, in this very uncertain and volatile times we're living, also politically, well, and that's not to mention minerals, which are, of course, very important. Yes, if you'd like to, it's very interesting. We'll be talking more about minerals later. Yes, but in terms of minerals in conflict, I mean, there are a whole series of criteria that have been developed for many years now to be able to identify refineries, foundries, companies that want to certify their product need to do a whole process of due diligence for the minerals, criteria go well beyond the 4 criteria that are considered by tin, gold, tantalum, and another. We've also included cobalt, which isn't considered a conflict mineral. And then everything's interconnected, you know, like the criteria for the durability of a battery also has to do with the availability of critical minerals. And one of the big challenges, going back to your question, is to continue working in the long term and with a multi-stakeholder approach with all stakeholders involved. Another criteria is participating in local initiatives in minerals, and that has led to slight improvements, but there's so much to be done. There are countries where poverty or the lack of governance have a huge impact, and we won't be able to solve all of these issues alone. It all depends on demand, the culture of sustainability, awareness, and how to put this roadmap into practice. It's a vision that you must feel is inspiring and that can help those who have to make the changes to take them on board. So there are many actors, many stakeholders, and that's the challenge. Yes, everything you mentioned is really interesting, but we see this on a daily basis because of the political situation and the war in DRC and in the Ukraine with this agreement with the Trump administration. We can talk about this later, but given how interesting it was, I wanted to thank Chiara for being so precise and clear, and ask the audience, those who are here in the room or those who are online, do you have any questions or any comments? What will be your next laptop? And you can look on the product finder if you want. Thank you. I'll ask my question in Spanish. I am part of a group of social organizations that recondition devices to extend their use, and they said there's around 100,000 workers in the electronic sectors, and at the same time there are some public procurement policies that include rebranded or reconditioned products. So I was asking whether you also certify second-hand devices. We're asked about this a lot. It could be used for reconditioned electronics, but it's a totally different background, technical background that is required. It would be more useful for this to come from the specialists, those who know what the issues are. So what we try is to get the products to have a longer life, or have spare parts available for repair, to be able to replace the battery in an easy way. There are many criteria that make it easier to recondition electronic devices. Also secure data transfer and all the rest. But I know that many public administrations are starting to buy reconditioned products. So the public administration is used to buying thousands of desktop computers of the same model, and when it comes to the supply of reconditioned computers, they can't find the numbers, but there are many different organizations of different sizes, and it's also useful to make this known to smaller organizations. Thanks for your question, because it helps us to expand the life cycle of these devices. Thank you. So we can have time for one more question, if you'd like. No more questions here? Okay, great. We have an online question. Great.
Mineral de conflicto, si hay tantos y evidentes conflictos ligados a este elemento. ¿Cómo se determina si un mineral metal
is not considered a conflict mineral? Well, we base ourselves on great regulations Dodd-Frank Act in the United States was the first of them, and the European regulation on the issue. I don't know why it wasn't considered as a blood mineral, but there is a high risk consideration or high social risk consideration, and cobalt is included in that one. It is also considered to be a critical mineral, also by the European Union. But each country has their own classifications. Critical minerals are the ones that you are lacking internally, so each country has their own availability of certain minerals. But I don't know why exactly. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, this is one of the countries where they are suffering the most serious issues with minerals. There are some official mines now, but there are a lot of informal mines. I am not a specialist of mineral classification, but we are based on the main world regulations, which have allowed for these concepts to be implemented with their subsequent actions. Well, thank you very much, Chiara. It has been really interesting. Maybe I think we need to give a round of applause. Thank you. And I hope that this was useful to maybe put some of the ideas into practice in a more personal context. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Chiara. So we're now going to move on. This is a non-stop. Oh, I'm being signaled. What is it? Can we have the video now? We have an almost live video from the Philippines, right? It's not live. It's pre-recorded, but it's from Marian Castillo, and we're sending it now.
Greetings and solidarity to all comrades. First, I would like to thank SETEM for giving us the chance to share our union experiences and the present situation of the workers in Xperia. I am Mary Castillo, currently the union president of SPM Philippines Incorporated Workers Union and also the president of Metalworkers Alliance of the Philippines. The hardships experienced by the workers of Xperia are also being experienced by other workers in the Philippines and around the world because of the nature of capitalism, which seeks to accumulate increasing profits. With governments as accomplices, neoliberal policies are being widely implemented against the working class. These policies include contractualization, imposing extremely low wages, implementing wage rationalization, large-scale layoffs due to cost optimization, automation, and others. The workers of Xperia are part of the vast number of workers whose wages are being undervalued amidst the high prices of goods, rent, water, electricity, being laid off, being deprived of rights, and so on. As a result, thousands of families are being pushed into extreme poverty. From the Xperia website, it proudly states that it produces more than 90 billion essential semiconductors every year. Xperia takes pride in its plant in Cabuyao, Laguna, in the Philippines as the home for assembly and testing. It processes an estimated 1 billion clip-bond power package capabilities or chips used in essential electric products every year. This level of productivity by Xperia in the Philippines is only made possible because of the workers. However, due to the inherent greed of capitalists, they want to further increase their profits, expanding production while reducing labor costs. This is the reason for the layoffs and the undervaluation of workers' wages and benefits. It is also expected that layoffs will continue at Xperia due to its ongoing cost optimization efforts in pursuit of higher profits. It aims to reach a 1:9 workers to machine ratio. This goal improving production to increase profits at the expense at the expense of workers' welfare, keeping wages low and laying off workers is a natural characteristic of capitalist production. The collective bargaining agreement (CBA) negotiations with Nexperia have lasted for over a year, with discussions starting in January 2024. Before this year, in 2023, there was widespread layoff continuing into 2024, where over 500 workers lost their jobs. 11 union members were forcibly laid off, allegedly to being low performers. Management violated our CBA and carried out layoffs during the negotiation period. As a result, we filed a notice of strike and held a strike voting, which overwhelmingly voted yes to strike. Management settled by prioritizing rehiring them once the volume increased and provided proper separation packages and CBA grants. Because of Nexperia's desire to force workers to accept a meager wage increase of 17 pesos over 3 years, the negotiations reached a deadlock. We filed another notice of strike for the CBA on December 10, 2024. In retaliation, management fired 4 union officers, including me, on fabricated charges on December 17. Nexperia's clear intention was to intimidate and weaken the union by firing the 4 officers who led the fight for higher wages and job security. We filed another notice of strike and conducted another strike voting, which again got overwhelming voted a yes to strike. The workers were preparing for the strike, but just before the strike was about to break out, an assumption of jurisdiction order by the Department of Labor was issued on February 5 of this year to prevent the strike. Management sought the intervention of the Department of Labor and Employment, collaborating with them because they did not want the production to stop. Now that the discussion are under the AJ, or the assumption of the jurisdiction, Nexperia has been firm in offering a low settlement and only wants to reinstate 2 officers. Our union stands firm that all officers should be reinstated and the CBA should be completed. By dismissing the union officers who also serve as the negotiation panel, management has deprived the union of its fundamental rights to organize, bargain, and participate in democratic processes. Based on these facts, it is clear to the workers a strike is the answer to greedy capitalists like Nexperia. The entire union membership is now on strike. 700 workers are now inside the plant, while the others are here in the picket line near the gate of economic zones in the region. Our shout and call: support Nexperia workers on strike. Nexperia and Department of Labor anti-worker. Nexperia greedy for profit. Though Department of Labor anti-worker, reinstate or dismiss union leaders, fight for decent wages, job security and rights, respect collective bargaining agreement. Thank you very much.
I tenim la corresponsal de Mobile
That
Social
was our reporter from Mobile Social Congress, who was reporting to us at the beginning of the strike, almost live from the Philippines. So our next speaker, and I know there are some questions already, and we will delve into this: mining, electronics, and inequalities, stories of global impact. And we will have 3 speakers with us in this session. We will have 1 presentation, and then we'll take the questions, because I can see you're very interested in this. First, we'll have Emmanuel Umpula. I will say their names first, and later I will explain who each one is, so that we can have the information closer to their presentation. Then we will also have Sabelo Mnguni online, and in person we will have Claudia Custodio, and she must be around here. So while we take a seat, and this is an issue that is a structural issue, but a current one. So we will start with Emmanuel, founder and executive director of Afrewatch in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Afrewatch is an entity defending an equitable and fair exploitation of minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Emmanuel has worked for local, national, and international organizations, and he has played a key role in the negotiation of the minings with multinational companies with regards to the mining sector and the workers in the mining sector. It will be interesting to hear what Emmanuel has to say about the current situation. You know that the rebel groups arrived in Goma and then Bukavu in the Kivu region bordering Rwanda, and we know that minerals are playing a fundamental role in this conflict. What is the role that the European Union is playing? What are the other involved actors? Rwanda is playing a key role, of course. I would ask the next speakers to stick to the time allocated for their presentation. 20 minutes for each. After Emmanuel's presentation, we can make our questions to him. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Yes.
You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me to this presentation and to talk about the situation in DRC. And I'm now in Guinea, in a village called Sigiri now, working with communities, but I need to talk about the situation in Congo. That means even if we have that host situation now in Congo, as NGOs, we keep working. And that helps give us the strength to keep our work. So the situation, I think this is not a new situation because the conflict has been for more than 3 decades in that region. And the reason why this conflict doesn't end, it means people, some who has some interest, they need to control that part of the region so they can create the no-state zone and try to control those minerals. So the new situation in Goma and around Goma and Bukavu and around Bukavu is very hot, I can say, because of a lot of human rights violations around. More people have died. They've been executed, and then there is a lot of people who left their homes now, so they are out. They don't have any support because of that conflict, that bad situation. And so why it takes so long? Because this conflict is not new, and people know more, not just now, but more millions and millions of Congolese have died. But the world is not reacting. How to stop that war? One of the reasons, or the main reason, is that people need to control those minerals, because you have those minerals around that part of the DRC, which are very important for the energy transition, for everything we are doing. We are for having gadgets and everything we need for how our modern lives today. We need those minerals for the energy transition. So everyone is trying to control. And the certification system which is in place doesn't work, because when those minerals are leaving DRC, they go to neighboring countries, then they take other direction. So many countries, especially Rwanda, its economy is related to the instability of DRC. So the Rwandan government can't support its own budget or population without having this situation in the DRC. So, of course, they talk about the M23. M23 is not just, it's just people who have been using by Rwandan government to come by presenting some reasons, which are not really reason, because the reason behind is how they control those minerals, how they stabilize that part of the DRC, and that helps them to smuggle, that help them to get those minerals, and then they can sell. So last year, the EU signed, because each country is trying to get access to those critical minerals, and DRC on those critical minerals, a big part of them, DRC on them. So the EU, they signed some MOUs with DRC, but also Rwanda. How can them get access to those minerals? And we know that Rwanda doesn't own those minerals. So they don't own, not just they don't own minerals, but they create that kind of situation for them to get done. So as civil society, we made a lot of declarations asking for the EU to cancel that MOU with Rwanda, because they can't have an MOU with a country which doesn't have those minerals, or the country which is smuggling mineral from another country, the country which is destabilizing, killing people for them to get those minerals, and the EU should not have any MOU with this country. And the other question we are asking is that, of course, there is an MOU between the EU and Congo. There is a lot of questions on how that will work, how the EU will, is the EU need just to do what is going now, that getting those minerals, or does the EU have a plan how they can develop a partnership with DRC, how they can transform those minerals locally? Because now the system in place is that people are taking those raw materials, and you know, when you take raw materials, these are not profitable for the country, doesn't create any additional value to those minerals. So it's not benefiting for the creating benefit for the country which own those minerals. So we are asking them to have a clear plan. We are asking them to share with us their roadmap. So there is no transparency with civil society. It can be Congolese civil society, but also European. We've been asking them to spare with us. We don't get. But one of the reasons they are saying is that because they are in the competition with China, they can't release those information. And now, so we don't have the access to the roadmap, but also there is some project. It's like 170 projects which have been they are selecting. So we don't know who is getting who will get will win those projects. There will be funding, are there some Congolese companies which applied to get those contracts or not? How it work? And do they have some projects, especially in DRC, in terms of mineral additional, how to create value in locally in DRC? So there's a lot of questions without answers, and we've been writing to them both in DRC and in Brussels, and we not have any answers. Of course, you would like me also to talk about the case against Apple, because they've been accused by the DRC government to play a role on the situation on eastern of DRC. This, I think you heard about that the case was rejected by the French court. And I mean, this situation is, I mean, it's just, is not just one company which is involved. I think there should be many companies which are benefiting from this situation eastern of Congo. The only message we, as civil society, we are asking them is that to bring peace and to see how they can mine, how they can do business in a good way, because of those, because the situation now is not profitable for Congolese, for people. So we need where they can come and mine without to come directly to Congo. Why coming through other entities, coming through other countries for them to get those minerals? And they know that how many people have died because of this situation. So, I mean, I'm not saying that Apple is directly linked, but there is a lot of reports, EU reports, which are clear that there is a group of interests which are benefiting from this worst situation in the eastern of Congo. So there should be an investigation, really investigation, to make sure and to identify those companies which are getting profit from this situation. And the many of UN reports had pointed many of these entities, and so we need, and there should be an investigation. I don't know, maybe why the reason why this case were rejected is that because of Congo didn't bring enough proof to make the link between Apple and the situation on the ground, or not, or because of the jurisdiction is not French, is not the jurisdiction where the Congolese government should go against that. Or yeah, so there should be enough reason, and we are waiting to get that the decision, the judgment, so we can analyze and see how the judge, what are the main reason why this case were not taken into consideration. Lack of proof or lack of link between Apple and the situation on ground. So we need to make that clear. But what is true is that those companies, there is companies linked to that bad business, people who are benefiting from that business. So that's the situation now, and we don't know how many times this situation will last, when. But what, as Congolese, we need the involvement of all entire international communities, people of good faith, to because they've been silent for a long time, make an end to this. all people involved in this situation should be taken to account, and they should be accountable for those for this whole situation, for what they did, and the human rights violations. Yeah, so I can stop from that, and if there is some questions, and then I can respond to those questions.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. It was very interesting. I'm sure there will be questions from the audience. If it's okay with you, I will ask the two other people in the panel the two other speakers to speak about their issues, and then afterwards we will invite everyone to ask questions. I'm sure there will be some
no problem
from you. Moltes gràcies, Emmanuel. Vull posar en valor tot això que aquestes veus que...
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. All these voices from the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Indonesia and the Philippines are very interesting. We also have Sabelo Mnguni online. He is a National Administrator of Mining Affected Communities United in Action. MACUA is the acronym. Maybe he will be using this. Mining Communities Affected United in Action. This is the name of the NGO, of community-based NGO formed by communities affected by mining. They are defending the interests of the people affected by mining. And this NGO has its head offices in South Africa. I am sure that Sabelo will give us a very interesting perspective on the issue. He's online. Welcome, Sabelo.
So please, it will be interesting to know about your organization, MACUA, the values and the mission of your organization. And I think you will have some time also to explain us about the case of the mine in Stilfontein. So please, Sabelo, the floor is yours. And welcome.
No, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly, and we can see you.
Thank you. Yes, good evening to everyone who attended, and thank you for having us as an organization to be able to be part of the Congress. It's very progressive. No, thanks. As the facilitator has mentioned, my name is Sabelo Mnguni. I'm from Africa, currently based in South Africa. I'm from an organization called Mining Affected Communities United in Action. So MACUA, in short, we call it MACUA. MACUA is a non-governmental community-based united front of mining affected communities. It was formed in response to the need to protect the integrity and the interest of people living in mining areas, nationally, regionally, and internationally. So MACUA is a radical movement aimed at representing the voice of communities who have not been consulted in the process of allocating mining licenses, community development, and the distribution of incomes, of mining incomes, and those communities who are the ones who are bearing the brunt of health and environmental degradation and impact of mining. MACUA strives to be the voice of the community and will always be aligned with progressive movement in South Africa and international. And we also join in struggles that oppose unjust laws. MACUA organization is governed by clear principles that leaders are accountable to the community-based branches. We cannot take decisions outside of legitimate representative and branch decision-making structures at all affected people. In all our struggles against colonialism and apartheid, we have struggled for those and have insisted that no authority is greater than the will of the people. Basically, we are saying people before the profit as an organization. One of our vision and mission of the organization is to protect mining communities, protect mine workers, and protect artisanal mining. So maybe to jump in to the second point where we speak of the crisis that the world has seen transpiring or happening in Stilfontein. So Stilfontein it's a former mining town that is situated in Klerksdorp. Klerksdorp it's in a province we call Northwest in South Africa. So for the past 100 years, Stilfontein has been dependent in gold mining as a dominant local economy that provided over 100,000 jobs during that period when it was still operational. Mining activities started to decrease between 2006 to 2012, with almost 90% of operation closing down into 2015. The last operation mine that closed down into 2015 was a Bafokeng gold mine, leaving over 100,000 workers unemployed, without any alternative skill, without any alternative economy. Remember, the community, or the Stilfontein as a community, was solely dependent on mining activities as a local economy that plays a big role within the society. So when mining closed down in the society, it left the community undeveloped. It didn't rehabilitate the land as they are supposed to do, compelled by the law. So they also left without providing any means of surviving for their workers. Also, some without even paying some of the former mine workers. So that situation created a large pool of unemployed people within the community of Stilfontein, of which is something that we've seen happening across the country, something that we've seen happening across the continent. Comrade Emmanuel just mentioned that in DRC, we've seen what is happening, where minerals are at the center of everything. It's a phenomenon that is happening across the continent where there are minerals, particularly now that we are moving to critical minerals that are earmarked for electronics, that are earmarked for the just energy transition. So in Stilfontein, what happened is, after the closure of the mine in 2015, there was a large pool of people who are not working, who are unemployed. There are no any other economy that is happening around in that community. Only mining was the center of the economy. So they found themselves having to go back to those shafts that they were working on. Remember, as mining communities, normally the only skill that we do possess is mining skill. So you can't utilize that skill in any other economy. You can't take a mining skill and go work in the agricultural sector or go work in the banking sector, because now the only skill that you know is mining. So many of them went back to mine those shafts that were left open by Bafokeng mine. So maybe just to bring a point, a quick point, to say, South Africa has mining legislation that is clear as to what needs to happen before mining taking place, what needs to happen to ring the operation, what needs to happen when the mine closes down. So one of those laws is clear in terms of rehabilitating the land, basically meaning closing all the shafts that were open if it was underground mining, if it was surface mining, basically put the land back as it was before mining. So Bafokeng gold mine didn't adhere to South African legislation law in terms of mining environment. They left it derelict. When we say derelict, we refer to a mine that is ownerless. So the workers went back. So during that period, it happened in 2023 that South African government launched an operation, what they call Operation Valamkot. It is in a Zulu name. So in English, one can refer to is Operation Close the Hole. So with that operation, they were aiming at dealing with illegal mining. So it is also important to state that in the context of South African laws or in the context of legislation, there is no criminal act that is referred to as illegal mining. So, be that as may, the government launched that program where they were closing down illegal operations according to the state. So what they did, the strategy that they employed is they closed down all the entrance and exit points the artisanal miners are using to go underground to continue to mine because of starvation, because of poverty, basically. The reason we go back to, or the reason we find ourselves moving from mine workers to artisanal miners is because of closing down of shaft, and we left without alternative skill. So the skill that we know is mining. So once the operation started in 2023, they closed down all entrance and exit point. Those exit point, what also did cause is that it prevented the entrance and the exit in terms of sending basic needs such as water, food for those who are underground. Here we are talking about people who are over 1,000. We can estimate and say 1,000 people were underground in different shafts. So Stilfontein had 12 different shafts that are derelict or that are ownerless. So they went underground to continue to mine. When the police came in, they disrupted the system that they were using to go underground and also to exit. They found themselves without any means of exiting the shaft. So some group of artisanal miners were able to surface using a Margaret shaft. Margaret shaft is owned by Harmony Gold. So the shaft is still operational where it is used to pump water from underground. Those who are familiar with mining, especially underground mining, underground is a lot of water. So many of those shafts, they are left open and they end up flooding. So Margaret shaft was used to pump the water from the shaft, from preventing the shaft to start flooding, which can negatively impact the community. So in 2024, the operation Close the Hole was intensified, where we saw a lot of police personnel or SAE, South African Police Services officers came in and occupied all those exit points, leaving those who are underground without any exit point, without any means of accessing food and accessing water. So they remained underground for a period of over 3 months. That led to over more than 300 artisanal miners losing their life as a result of starvation and dehydration. So through the act or through the operation that was conducted by the state, it led to people dying, which in terms of South African Constitution infringed or violated Section 11. Section 11 speaks about right to life. So when it says right to life, it means no one has a right to kill anyone at any circumstance. But then we saw more than 300 artisanal miners being killed or murdered or put in a situation that killed them as a result of the operation that is conducted by the state with an intention of dealing with illegal mining, of which I mentioned earlier on. Illegal mining is something that is still being debated within the judicial system of South Africa, where even the magistrate couldn't even pin any of the artisanal miners with illegal mining. So if maybe then the last point to add, to say, what we saw happening in Stilfontein, it's one, when it comes to poor working class or communities that are affected by mining, there is a deliberate act or there's disregard of basic human rights towards those communities. The state and mining companies are always ensuring that they put profit before the people, where we see there's no adherence in terms of legislation of South Africa, in terms of the law. From hearing what Comrade Emmanuel was saying, what is happening in DRC, one can be sure that it's a phenomenon that is happening across the continent, where we see politicians or political leaders or statements being in a close relationship that infringe our right with mining companies, where you'll see licenses are being given without due process. So to move on, when we look at the continent itself or African mineral landscape, we as Africans, we acknowledge that we can say like almost 300 billion US dollars of the continent GDP comes from mining sector. We acknowledge that one. Mining sector is one of the key economic drivers of the continent. Though, when you look at the energy just transition that the society is or the world is talking about, when you look at the technologies that we are moving at, let me say a majority of the minerals that are needed for energy transition for electronics come from Africa. With Southern Africa having majority of those minerals. When you look at minerals that are needed for electronics, we talk about manganese. South Africa has a lot of manganese deposit. We talk about copper. DRC is a majority of it supplies almost 80% of the world copper within in the sphere of those needed minerals. We have got copper that is needed for electrical cars, solar panels and stuff. We've got rare earth minerals that are situated in Africa, situated in the Southern Africa. So we mining on its own, or mining as an activity, or the extractions of minerals, is having a very negative direct impact towards mining affected communities, where now we see, particularly, we normally have two types of mining. There's underground mining, there's surface mining. Most of these minerals that are extracted in Africa, that are extracted in South Africa, they leave our shores without being beneficiated or without proper processing. Basically, we are supplying the world with raw materials. So us in supplying raw materials, we find ourselves having a lot of negative effects. We are experiencing water pollution. We are experiencing air pollution. We are experiencing soil pollutions. Those pollutions are having a negative impact in terms of our health. You see now, when you look at the one can put it in the sense, when you look at the emissions, the greenhouse emissions that we are concerned about, that lead us to move in terms of fossil fuel energy to green energy. In that production, in that extraction of those minerals, we are suffering a lot as a country without having to, without any recourse. To use another example, Comrade Emmanuel explained that we have a lot of answers, but we have a lot of questions without answers. We engage these mining companies, we engage our states, but we as mining affected communities, we as communities, we don't get any recourse. So to an extent that
5 minutes, 5 minutes.
5 minutes, thanks. So maybe to move on from the pollutions, another impact that we are faced by that we face in terms of mining, we are facing displacement. Of a period, we've seen more than 30,000 to 100,000 families being displaced at the expense of mining. So at the moment where we are sitting, in terms of community versus mining companies and the states, there are a lot of legal challenges that we are facing. We are facing intimidation as civil society organizations, as activists who are advocating for these communities. We are facing, we have seen the state and the police always protecting mining companies during peaceful protest where we raise our frustrations as communities. In South Africa, we've got an institution that is called Corruption Watch. It conducted a research in 2023. The report stated that 38% of cases in the mining are related to corruption. The corruption that happens between the state and mining companies. So there's lack of public participation processes or consultation process when mining licenses are being issued or when a certain mining company needs to come to our shores. So due to this lack there's across the continent, there's poor or lack of proper legislation, regulation that protects environment, that protects us as communities. So we find ourselves then depending on civil society organizations. We find ourselves depending on activists that are becoming our workpiece, such as MACUA, such as Comrade Emmanuel. So in conclusion, what we need to see happening in Africa, one, we've been calling for FP, free, prior, and informed consent. So what we are saying with free, prior, and informed consent as a principle is that whenever any project or activity that takes place in our community, we need to be given information prior it takes place. We need to give consent, not consulted. We are looking for consultant. Also, what we are saying is the artisanal mining space. We are saying in DRC Congo, artisanal miners are dominant. But then our states, our governments are criminalizing the sector. What we are calling for as MACUA also, we are calling for the criminalization of artisanal miners. We are calling for legislation to be put in place to protect our environmental rights, our basic human rights, and particularly those who are participating in the sector. Because we've seen that artisanal mining sector does contribute towards the mainstream economy. We have seen that many of those minerals that are extracted in the artisanal mining sector, they go back to the main economy or to the main commercial miners. In Europe, we are sitting with the biggest gold mine producer that doesn't even own any mine. There's no gold mine that is happening in Europe, but then you find companies that are set to be the big in the industry, yet they don't. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sabelo. You have to know that the room is packed. Everyone was looking at you and listening to you very carefully. So please stick around, because afterwards we'll have time for some questions. Thank you very much. It was very interesting from South Africa, Sabelo. And now we are moving to Claudia Custodio. La Claudia es investigadora de l'àrea de justícia climàtica a
So we now
l'Observatori.
move on to Claudia Custodio, who's a research at ODHE. She's sitting here to my left. So we go from the online to the room. She has a degree in human geography and development by the Lund University in Sweden and has a master's in human ecology, culture, power, and sustainability. So with Claudia, we will learn about rare earths. Not much is said of rare earths. Wink, wink. In theory, there are not many rare earths. So Claudia will tell us more about these rare earths. A lot has been said about them based on the recent agreement between Ukraine and US. And she will be telling us more specifically about the research and awareness campaigns on the extraction of rare earths in Madagascar and the role that these rare earths play in the green transition and how they're used in the defense sector, and the need to defend the reduction in the demand for critical rare earths, as was in the Memorandum of Understanding between the European Union and Ukraine, where these critical minerals were found. And she will be sharing her example from Madagascar. So thanks, Claudia, and please go ahead. Welcome.
You have a PowerPoint, some slides? You have them around? Thank you. When I was invited to give this presentation, we didn't know that rare earths would be so popular, or they would, attract so much attention. The Mobile World Congress, once again, is welcomed by the city, Barcelona, and it is full of companies violating human rights. As we know, as Agus was saying, I am representing ODHE, which is the Observatory of Depth of Globalization. And we are an entity in the city of Barcelona carrying out critical analysis from social mobilization and transformation in carrying out advocacy in social, economic, environmental, and gender inequalities. And we are currently analyzing the green transition to see whether its impacts are leading us towards global justice. One of the last publications, if you're interested in this you can find on our website. So we can start getting into the context of this presentation. And I would like to start speaking about the green transition. It is urgent to decarbonize society, as we all know, because the climate change impacts are very serious. The European countries are proposing an alternative, which is a green transition to decarbonize economy by digitalizing our societies, without bearing in mind that this green transition towards renewable energies have also an important material base, which is often invisible. As Agus said before, and some colleagues also mentioned, there are a series of necessary minerals necessary for these technologies, and oftentimes they are also necessary minerals to produce military products for the military weaponry. Currently, the European Union is not exploiting a lot of these critical minerals, but it is importing it from outside, although it represents 6. It's only 6% of the world population. The Europeans are consuming 60% of these minerals, around 60% of these minerals. Not only this, but this transition has a narrative that it will decarbonize society. However, this must be done in a framework that will guarantee that the European Union will keep growing economically. So it's not just a strategy to tackle the climate issue, climate change and the world planet crisis, but it is a strategy to guarantee that European Union will keep on growing economically and will accumulate profits, benefits, and many experts, it's not just us, but many experts claim that this is incompatible with respecting the environment. So the growth of the European Union will probably harm the growth of other regions. Just as an example, we can see that one of the managers of BlackRock, one of the greatest investment groups, said how the decarbonization of the global economy would create the greatest investment opportunity in our lives. So is this about decarbonizing, or what is this about really? Maybe it's not mainly about decarbonizing. So the European Union, within this digital and green transition strategy, made a list of minerals, critical materials for this transition. Why are they critical? There are critical and strategic materials. There are two different lists. They are critical when the provision by the European Union is at risk because it's not available in the European Union, and therefore they must be imported from other countries. So there's a list to implement policies to change these vulnerabilities and ensure they call it sustainable provision of these critical minerals. To the European Union countries, we will not delve into the detail of this law, but it is important to know that the 34 periodic elements include rare elements, and we will be focusing on rare earth elements today. You probably have heard about this already. It's in the news, and it will be in the news in the next few days, probably. The great economic powers such as the United States will be interested in them and are interested in them. There are 17 rare earths, if you will remember that from chemistry class. This is a range of 2 lines outside, and it's the upper one, and 2 more elements grouped together because of their magnetic and conductive properties, which are similar. They're often considered to be one only element, and they are 17 with different properties, but they are often grouped like this because of some similar properties that they have in common. Rare earth elements are not rare on Earth, but rather abundant. However, their concentration is not high enough to make it profitable to extract them. This is why their exploitation is not always worth it economically, and this is why they are called rare earths. They are posing some challenges, mainly in terms of their separation. They require complex chemical procedures, while oftentimes they are mixed or together to radioactive elements such as uranium and thorium, which means that in this separation process, radioactive processes are being generated. Thorium and radium are dangerous materials in terms of radioactivity. Radioactivity should harm the environment as little as possible, so people living around the area is adding potential violations of rights, and it's another complexity. They were discovered in the 18th century, and they were categorized as a group in itself in the mid-20th century. At the beginning, they didn't have many uses, but some new uses were discovered in the beginning of the 20th century. They started to be used for industrial uses because their properties allowed to light up industrial facilities, and it would allow them to keep on working during hours of darkness. So it was a key element for the development of industrial capitalism. Currently, however, their main uses are separated in mainly aerogenerators and the batteries for electric vehicles. However, they are also necessary for many other technologies, digital technologies mainly, in our daily uses, hard drives, lasers, X-rays, smartphones, so there's many components such as sound, microphone, vibration, and screens, not just smartphone screens, but also laptop screens, and in lighting, such as
en molts dels dispositius, per exemple, per dir alguns, els drons, els míssils intel·ligents, components...
such as light bulbs, and also for military uses, such as components for planes, drones, missiles. So they are key aspect to many technologies. Also for fiber optic, as you know, every household or almost every home in a region will have that. They also use fossil technologies. To give you some specific examples, in the refining of crude oil and also in conventional car engines. So rare earths cannot really be considered to be elements for which are ideal for the green transition, as you can see. This is a more visual graph. It's maybe a little small, so we can skip over this one. We can see the evolution of the demand of the Agency of the Energy Demand, grouping the main countries in the global north, representing 70% of that production. So from now to up to 2040, it is planned, or it is foreseen, that the demand of rare earth will double its number or even triple. It means double the amount of these minerals will be extracted, so which means many new mines would be open. As you can see, the brown or ochre color part, it represents the energy coming from green technologies, vehicles, electric vehicles, and wind generators, wind turbines. So it's important to see that, yes, green technology will increase, but this is a low increase, and it's lower than the increase of others that are not green. So most rare earths, about 80% of them in the world, are extracted and processed in China, which means they have control over that rare earth, and it's a very specific control, and so many industries depend on them. So with the rise of the political tensions in the last few years, the countries in the European Union and mainly the United States are trying desperately to find somewhere where they can extract rare earths from, or to build a parallel supply chain from China or somewhere else, because they can see that if they can't any longer get rare earths, there will be a big problem. In the 20th century, rare earths were being extracted in other territories, maybe not actually in the United States, and because of its toxicity and the problems they cause in the environment, the extraction was moved to China, and it's like a toxic division. There's a toxic division, as it is called, and they want to recover that extraction now. One of the mines that was closed in the 80s in the United States, called the Boenadi Pass, now was just reopened, and it's a rare earth mine. How have we worked on this in ODHE, in this issue of rare earths? Last year, actually in 2022, we worked together with international work specialized in rare earths and other entities, and this map was generated, the Environmental Justice Atlas. Have you heard of it? This is the link which makes social environmental problems are being visibilized and made visible. And in this case, it was completely related to extraction, processing, exploitation of rare earths. And 28 conflicts were identified related to extraction, processing, or final disposition, of rare earths. You have 5 minutes. Oh, wow. So of the 3 conflicts we identified, there's Madagascar. We spoke to the Madagascar entity, MACUA, and we collaborated with this entity, and we together decided to research a little more about what was happening in Madagascar. We can skip to the next slide, and I'll try to speed up. We carried out a fieldwork in Madagascar in July 2024 in order to identify those impacts on people, the Malgache people in territories that were being impacted by that extraction. To give you an example, this is an ex-French colony, ancient French colony. It's very vulnerable to climate change, suffering extreme weather phenomena and suffering the consequences of global warming. This country is in extreme poverty. Only 25% has access to electricity, to give you an example, and those having access to electricity are suffering daily electricity cuts. The government is in high debt, and international relationships like the world government are using indebtedness, and the national government are using indebtedness, are recurring to indebtedness, promoting mining, for example, as an beneficial activity to promote the economic growth of the country. In this context, can we move on to the next slide? We visited 3 projects of rare earths. The first one was in Tolanaro, in the southeast part of the country, in existing mines, exploited by Rio Tinto. Maybe you've heard of it. And this mine was opened in 2008. And Elmanat is the mineral exploited used to produce titanium, another element, but as a secondary material, also rare earths are being extracted in this mine. The terrain and the landscape has been destroyed. We can also maybe talk about that later. But the situation of the local populations, except those who live in the cities, has not improved, and they're still living in extreme poverty conditions, no electricity. They lost access to their territories, to their lands, to their woods, because the companies have demanded compensation, which means they will have access to the territory. And so not only the territory is affected by mining, they can't even access the woods near the mines. So they can't go gather food or woods in the forest or in the woods nearby. There have many protests against the mines, which have been repressed. There has been no media coverage of the case. And in autumn 2023, there was a protest where armed forces participated in order to repress that and control it. 3 people were killed in shootings, and the Malgache citizens did not speak about it. You have 2 minutes, okay? This is the construction of the company, and you can skip this. We also visited the southwest of the country in the area of Toliara, which is a rare earth project, which is not operational yet, but in January last year, they were awarded the permission for exploitation. The project is planned to last for 40 years. It was controlled by an Australian company, but just last year they changed hands to a United States company called Energy Fuels. And we think that they have to do with this new interest by the United States to control territories where the rare earth elements can be extracted. Here again, the population manifested. They were against the mining. They are working in fishery and farming, but we don't know what's going to happen. One of the leaders of the resistance movement was arrested the day before a protest, just after the news came out, and he was in prison until he signed a letter stating that he would never organize an activity or demonstration against the mine. Blackmail has been also paid, where companies have been paid money for people to demonstrate for the mine. And they are here. Here we have some images of the areas that will be affected by this project, the mines. Finally, we traveled to the north of the country, where there's yet another project potential for the extraction of rare earths in the peninsula of Pasandava, in a very remote area. Just earth, dirt roads only to arrive there, and there's a company ready to exploit the area. It's an interesting case because the local authorities have organized to slow down the process to prevent it from being approved. With the collaboration of the entity I mentioned before, their uneasiness with the project was communicated, and then some investors de-invested. So the company had to change from the stockholder, from the stock in Singapore to a different country. This is really interesting, Claudia. Thank you so much. You can give her a round of applause if you want.
Okay. Claudia, jo tinc una revista de periodisme internacional. Potser faràs un article, si t'interessa. Bueno.
Claudia, maybe you can write an article in my magazine. I am also managing a magazine on these issues. I will remind you that you have receivers for the TCO certificate. Well, I'm not sure rare earths can be certified in TCOs, but we can talk about it with Chiara. We could talk about it. Maybe, yes, we can link one session to the other, and that's interesting. But you can use this when there are people online, okay? Are there any questions for Manuel, Isabel, Claudia, or Claudia? Also for the people online. Hello. This question.
It's maybe, I mean, it's not, yeah, I will do the question anyway. So my take by participating in these workshops and this conference is that there is a part of the population in Europe that wants to participate based on moral values, on alleviating the suffering of other people. But then the impression is that this moral action, so this action to move and do something, lasts only in the moment when you see the things and you feel some emotion, the empathy, but then it fades away over time. And So, and then another part acts because of guilt, because the suffering is typically generated by company, which are companies from Europe, the US. So there is some guilt because they feel this representation by this company. So you feel this connection. So, but guilt is not really a good emotion to actually move and do something over time. So my question is that how can, based on your experiences on the field in Congo and South Africa, but also in other parts, the Philippines and all these places in the world where there is suffering, so of ways to practice habits that people can use every day in order to actively and fruitfully actually take action and every day and change their habits, because by changing the habits, then you change the way people behave. And because in a capitalistic system, the profits always come before the people, but actually the people is actually what makes profits. So that if you change the way people behave, then you can change how the money flows. And so you actually can have an impact, which is much more durable. So I want, if you can give us examples of practice that based on this resilience that the people that are affected by the situation can offer to people that actually have distant connection, so distance emotional connection, and then can actually use these tools every day and actually change something for real, not just with a good intention, which is good, but actually in practice, because it takes much more time and you need to change your habits daily and more deeply in some sense.
Okay, so if it's okay with you, we can go with Emmanuel, then Sabelo, and then Claudia, and we will wrap up. Okay, so firstly, Emmanuel.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I mean, of course, we need to change our habits. And I think one of the points we need is access to information. So in my view is that, of course, we know media usually play a good role in terms of giving information, but those information should be accurate. And in my understanding, there is really a lack of information to good people who they have strong power, they can act, then they can change a lot of things. But how can them get access to information? I can give the example of Eastern of Congo. As I said, it has been a long time, more than 3 decades. People are dying. But then if you find people around the world, they even not know what is going on. They even not know what minerals they are mining there, which companies. So, I mean, the first things I can say is access to information. As NGOs, as medias, we need to make sure that citizens all around the world, they have access to a good information. I think that's the power. Because they have the power, they are customers. They can see if they have all information, then they can make decision what they should consume or what they should buy or what they shouldn't buy. So for me, that's a way of giving that power to citizens so they can push those companies which are just seeing profit and they are neglecting human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I think you are right. We need better information, better media. So thank you very much. Sabelo, your take?
No. Yes, okay. Yes, to actually agree with Comrade Emmanuel. Yes, information. We normally say as MACUA that the difference between those who have and those who don't have, it's information. That's what separates us. So normally what needs to happen is capacity building, as Comrade Emmanuel is saying. So capacity building in what sense? In a political sense. So when we say political sense, research more as to what is happening on the ground and engage information, accurate information. So step 2, what we do as a movement, as a MACUA, is on the ground, we build what we call allyship or partnership. Partner with affected people, partner with people who are advocating on the space, and also partner with organizations that share similar values and missions as with you. In that sense, the energy that is amongst those comrades does also influence you as someone who wants to participate in the space, or wants to participate or to have that activism. The question is correct to say we've seen struggles or campaigns surfacing. Then the next thing you know, they die down. Then there's another strike. There's another campaign on top of that campaign. But then to be consistent, it takes information, it takes capacity building, it takes political understanding. Because as Comrade Emmanuel says, even the communities that are affected by mining, what we saw on the ground is that themselves, they don't understand what is happening around them. It takes information to assist them, is to being able to identify the name of the mining company, the minerals, how long, what is the legislation saying around mining. There is a gap between those who are controlling the means of production, those who are controlling political power, and those who are on the ground. It's the information. Once we bridge that particular gap, I also believe that we'll take struggles forward, more especially building partnerships in collaboration, solidarity with other comrades, with other countries, with other societies. It does give consistency and sustainability to any campaign or to any struggle. We've been facing the same struggle for over 100 years as Africa. Today, even still, we are continuing on the same struggle where we look for a justice, because we live in an unjust environment. We live in an unjust continent that is having unjust laws that continuously marginalize us as communities, irrespective whether we're a mining affected community, whether we are just a community that lives near the factory or in agricultural land. But then generally we are denied information with an intention to keep us at bay. Through information, we are able to change our society and our community.
Thank you very much, Sabelo. Thank you. And before saying goodbye to both of you, we will close you amb el comentari de Claudia. Tu què penses del que...
We would like to finish now with Claudia's comment on the question. I do agree with what my colleagues said. I agree completely. We maybe can try to transform this guilt. First, we need to be aware of these injustices. Obviously, a part of our action should not be limited to just being or not being consumers of technology. And we can participate in events like this one, and this can contribute to communicate these injustices and make them more visible. But we can add a big list of things to these kinds of actions. We can also demand the people in power to answer for this, and decision-making people to repair for this historical debt, to question in this inevitable economic growth. It is a mantra of infinite economic growth, and we might feel that we are not strong enough as individuals, but we will be even less strong if we stay sitting in our house and doing nothing, sitting around doing nothing. So we should try to act consistently. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Sabelo and Emmanuel.
Please listen to the audience. Can you listen? Very good.
Thank you, leaders. Thanks for the solidarity with people from Africa.
Thank you so much for your solidarity and for everything you are doing to improve the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you and goodbye. Thank you very much. Gràcies. Ja a preguntar. També el micro de RAC1 també hi ha coses rares. Bueno, aviam.
Okay. So now we move on to the final session, session 4. And we are still here. It's like a marathon. This last session, which will end at 9, will be focusing on technology. Oops. Sorry, a poster just collapsed and they're saying that it's the evil forces trying to attack us because we're talking of rare minerals. Anyway, that was just an anecdote. So, as I was saying, we're moving on to the final session on technology, occupation, and genocide. We will have two people with us here sitting next to me at the table.
So let's continue and move on to Palestine with Tina Mason, a researcher, an activist, an organizer of La Fira and La Mira, linking companies to the Israel apartheid. And she's also coordinator of World Humanitarian Action Forum. Tina, it would be interesting to hear about your collective, its objectives, the relationship between Mobile World Congress, Israeli technological companies, the genocide in Palestine. Also, bearing in mind what Lau was telling us. And welcome.
And I'm obviously
no problem. We are ready.
I know I'm very
we are
grateful
ready.
to Setem for the headsets. So yeah, if we can start the slides. Can you start the slides? It's coming. Okay. Okay, so as it's coming up, about us, our small group is called La Fira and La Mira. We are a group of individuals that live here in Barcelona. Some are local, some are international. We came together around a year ago through shared outrage with the genocide in Palestine, and in support of the Palestinian call for boycott, divest, and sanctions. So we started looking at the Fira. Start. Sorry, I'll continue a little bit about us at the moment. Oh, great. Yes. Thanks. So what do we do? Who are we and how do we work? So we're quite a small group. We take on the research about not only Mobile World Congress, but the different congresses that the Fira host. We share that research with CPCI, the Coalition Pro Complicitat amb Israel, and other organizations. So we work in collaboration. CPCI they lead on political advocacy. They lead on kind of strategy with other organizations, calling the large demos. And at the same time, we hold weekly kind of small actions outside the Fira to keep some pressure on the Fira. And we keep an eye on, as I mentioned, the different organizations, the different complicit companies and Israeli companies that are coming through the Fira. So we're from different backgrounds, creative backgrounds. We try to do some creative actions. We've kind of created apartheid zones around the Fira entries. We've done a roulette. We've done kind of mock press conferences, lots of small creative things. And then we come together with other organizations for demonstrations. And on Monday was our first direct action when we managed to block the entry of attendees at the Mobile World Congress for all of about 5 minutes. But we did. It was our first experience in actually linking arms and actually blocking the flow of entry. So yeah, if we can switch to the next slide. Some of this information might be a little bit granular, and that's because I'm not sure how much is known truly about Fira Barcelona. So I wanted to give a bit of detail about, why the Fira and the significance of the Fira. So the Fira is one of the most important trade fairs in Europe. It's huge, its venues are massive, it's incomparable to other venues in Barcelona. It's growing, so it has 4 venues. It's Montjuic, it's a Gran Via. They took over CCIB in 2021, and they've taken over the circuit to Barcelona in 2025. And that circuit will also be used for holding various kinds of events. So they have a growth strategy. They grew in 2024. I think their profit was hundreds of millions, like 300 million, set to grow exponentially. So they're very, yeah, they're big and they're growing. So they organised more than 270 events in 2024, of which some are in-house and some are externally organised. I've actually forgot to mention the most important part. The Fira is publicly owned. It's owned by a consortium of the Ajuntament, the Generalitat, and the Chamber of Commerce. It has what it calls autonomous business management. So whilst it's publicly owned, the business aspects are autonomously decided separately, supposedly, of kind of government level responsibility. At least that's how they tend to kind of divide the accountability. So yes, and in-house and external also matter, because this is another level of dividing that accountability. So it's not the Ajuntament, it's the Fira management. It's not the Fira management, it's the third-party company that is hosting this particular event. So for example, Mobile World Congress is organised by the company GSMA. They're headquartered in the UK, but they have a huge presence here in Barcelona, and they're actually embedded within the Fira Barcelona building itself. So they're very together. Whereas Smart City is an in-house event. It's a Fira Barcelona event. So yes, they also hold local and international fairs. So Smart City is a fair that is being taken around different global cities. And I just wanted it because I was thinking about Emmanuel's speech and about holding the Rwandan government accountable. It's just a case in point that Mobile World Congress and GSMA will also hold a Mobile World Congress in Kigali in 2025. So there are these sort of local international links and bridges between both the Fira and some of their you know, main companies. I think I'm going to go way over. I'm going to have to speed up a lot.
No problem.
We're still good. Still
yes,
good.
yes.
Okay. Great.
6 minutes. You have still 13 minutes.
13. Oh, good.
Yes,
Good.
no problem.
Great. Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
Main ideas, always good
yes.
for the people, you know, the main ideas.
Yeah, I know, but there's so much detail.
Yes, that's the thing.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so this is the timeline of the events that we have been looking at. So since 2024, Mobile World Congress, then there was UNVEX, which is the unmanned systems, so it's drones, it's also land and sea-based unmanned systems, which are it's very defense sector related congress. Then there was the MRO Aviation Week, aviation sector, again, aerospace and defense was a huge sector within this one. Smart City, I'm going to come to it in the next slide in more detail. They also hold, in addition to congresses and events, the Fira also hold kind of private events for corporations, and they've been holding HP's private corporate event for the last 2 years. It's set again for this year coming up. Now is Mobile World Congress. I'm going to go into detail, and upcoming is one that we have an eye on. Don't know yet if it's something to be particularly concerned about, but we've seen on Advanced Factories Congress that their profile, they have a kind of visitor profile, and part of that profile is defense sector profile. So we're sort of keeping a lookout. Can we go to the next slide? So I can't get into all of the companies because there are so many that are coming through the doors of the Fira. So I'll I'll try to mention the main points. In 2024, obviously, we were already well into the live streamed genocide. Mobile World Congress had a pavilion of more than 30 Israeli companies. And they also platformed a company called Extend. Extend are an Israeli military drone tech company. After the Congress, Extend went on to raise $40 million in investment funding for their successful Gaza-tested drones. So this really demonstrates the importance of who the Fira is allowing in through the building and onto the stages, and what they then go on to achieve in terms of international investment.
10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So Unvex, the drones company, there were nine companies attending whose services and products are used by Israel. I won't go into all of them. MRO Europe Aviation Week. This one was major. There were a ton of like defense companies, predominantly American defense companies, but there were 3 Israeli companies, 2 Israeli arms companies, and one being the Israeli state-armed arms company, IAI, Israel Aerospace Industries. They exhibited, you can see in the picture, they have, this is actually the pavilion, the stand that they had at MRO Aviation Week. So for smart, also in addition, there were like many additional companies. So 7 international arms companies complicit in the genocide, supplying Israel, further 16 on the F-35 supply chain. And just a note that we use secondary data sources to do our research. So we rely a lot on lists that have already been compiled. For example, American Friends Service Committee. We look at the BDS website. We look at workers in Palestine, and we do our own additional research. So on Smart City Expo, the next one is, no, sorry, I just mean the next one on the slide. Smart City Expo also had an Israel pavilion. And this one is quite important in the sense that Smart City Expo is an in-house event. It's a Fira Barcelona event, and they had at this event an Israel pavilion. Within this pavilion, there are at least 4 companies that a connection can be drawn with illegal occupation, as one of their clients is Netive, and Netive is Israel's national transportation infrastructure company, operating in the illegally occupied West Bank, responsible for kind of settlement infrastructure and everything else. So yes, and then HP, as I've mentioned before, I think HP could be an interesting one to look at, particularly for Barcelona. In the CEO's presentation that he gave at the event, he actually said, Barcelona is my second home, and I have a place here, or something like this. And so I think there's probably quite a connection between HP and Barcelona. And they are also the new partner of FC Barcelona. So there's a couple of connections here. It's the Fira Barcelona, but it's also FC Barcelona relationship with HP. And HP is, just to say, is a significant enabler of Israel's ongoing occupation through partnerships with the Israeli government, military, prisons, and police. HP provide critical technological and logistical support that facilitate war crimes and crimes against humanity. So yes, coming up to now then, with Mobile World Congress this year. This year there are 46 Israeli companies attending. 31 of those companies are attending via the Israel Pavilion. A further 15 are just there separately of the pavilion, but there are about 46. 9 of these companies, their founders and CEOs have a long military background. So this goes beyond compulsory service. This is, you know, they have kind of tech military background in the elite unit 8200. At least 6 of the companies provide services and products to the military, and then there's a bunch of international complicit companies attending. Obviously, as Lau has just been talking about, attending is Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Cisco, Palantir, and Skydio. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Thank you. Yes. So the significance of the Israeli tech sector is that it is known to be deeply embedded with the Israeli military. It's been referred to as a revolving door. So people leave the military having gained a lot of tech expertise in the world's most high-tech military. They leave and they create startups. These startups are then favored for kind of research and development projects within the IDF again, and they kind of just sort of ping pong back and forth. It's also what gives Israel its startup nation name. It is doing quite well in terms of the Israeli economy, not necessarily, but the Israeli tech sector seem to be feeling quite confident about themselves. And they are heavily dependent on international investment. So in terms of key sectors to look at for applying boycott, divestment and sanction, it really makes sense that it is the Israeli tech sector. And then, yes, if we go to the next slide. And then just sort of, reiterating the connection between the Fira and Israel specifically, that the Israeli pavilion is organized by the Israel Export Institute, which is government, basically. It's Israeli government. There is also a designated sales representative for the Israeli kind of sector companies, and there aren't many. So the Fira don't have that many country-specific delegates that focus on that country's business with the Fira, but Israel have a delegate, and in some cases they are the only delegate to have a Fira Barcelona email address. So we find that a little interesting. If we can go to the next slide. This is the inauguration of the pavilion, the Israeli pavilion on Monday, and that's the Director General of the Ministry of Economy and Industry. So there's high-level Israeli government officials attending Mobile World Congress to open the pavilion. And I've just put that picture by the side here, where you can see the advertising for Mobile World Congress, that as much as the Ajuntement might want to push off this Congress on GSMA as the organizing company, they're quite happy to put their logo at the bottom of the advertising. So it's very clearly government to government level collaboration. I might have to skip a little bit. If we can just skip slide 7 and then go, because some of these concepts have been covered. So this is just to mention this kind of blurring of the commercial sector market with the military sector that's going on at the Fira. A lot of their Firas and congresses are kind of put out as if it concerns a commercial market, but when you start looking at their exhibitors, and you start looking at their sponsors. So this year for Mobile World Congress, Indra and Tails are 2 sponsors, amongst many others. If you start looking at their visitor profiles, what else? If you start looking at their speakers, they a lot of the times that there are defense companies coming, there are military companies coming. Yeah, if we can go to, do I have like another minute?
Okay.
Like one?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
That's okay.
Okay, there's, where should we, yeah, maybe we can skip, like, okay, the demand's obvious, like cut ties with Israel. And side tech, actions and response. Yeah, there's been some key petitions that CPCI have led. This one for Mobile World Congress, there's more than 100 organizations signed it, including unions. Yeah, I'm thinking actually of something that Lau was talking about in terms of worker organizing, which we've been trying to make some collaboration with workers at the Fira and GSMA, and that's been interesting. And the response has been pretty much to ignore everything, keep pushing things off onto the next level of accountability. And in some cases, there's been some intimidation during our weekly presence. But there has been some successes. So if we can just go to the, just go to the next one. Yes, there was the drone, there was going to be a drone demonstration and that was cancelled. There have been trade union support, political support. So 18 deputies have signed the petition. And we've managed to get some messages in via keynote speakers. So Ruha Benjamin, and I don't think we're going to have time to play the video.
And also events like this one.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you too. Yes. And that's it.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. Thank you, Tina. Very good. That's very good. Thank you. Thank you. We will speak now with Nora Miralles, gran periodista,
Nora Miralles is a great journalist specialized in international issues, working for the observatory and in the area. And she's collaborated with Centre de l'Est with us, with SETEM. She's collaborator with our review as well.
Compromís pels drets humans. I avui, Nora, ens parlaràs. Fixa't que la gent s'ha quedat aquí fins al final per escoltar.
So, Nora, people have stayed here because they want to listen to you. And you're going to talk about massive surveillance in the Maghreb, a space to protect civil society. You can do your presentation now, and I'm surely there will be questions after that. It's a pleasure to share this panel with you. You have the floor.
Well, it's a pleasure for me. Thanks so much, SETEM, for inviting us. Basically, my intervention will try to explain what exactly the companies that Tina mentioned do that are complicit with the Fira de Barcelona. Our thesis, I mean, it's clear that there's an overtaking of civil spaces, and surveillance and control technologies play a key role in shrinking the space for global civil society, especially if we see them as the hardware and the software. What they do is they monitor the behavior, the activities, and the information of the population. It's an extremely profitable business. In 2022, immediately after COVID, had a turnover of more than $133 million, and now it's more than $150 billion globally. It's a market that is basically controlled by Western companies, as we're so mainly Israeli, but also European and American and Canadian companies, but their products are used and tested in a predominant way on populations in the global south, and also on populations of occupied territories, such as the Palestinian occupied territories or Western Sahara. What we do in our report is to go from Morocco to Iraq to look at how these technologies that are totally deregulated globally are used to persecute political dissidents, opposition, journalists, judges, LGBTI people, and all dissident groups in society. And this is happening at a time where, as I said, there's a multi-billion-dollar investment in artificial intelligence tools that are completely deregulated. There are no safeguards, not even the bare minimum, to control what is going on with these technologies. And as we said, at a time where we see a rise of authoritarianism, militarization, a weakening of the protection of human rights, and at the time of a global economic and environmental crisis where communities, dissident political communities are mobilizing for situations such as the genocide in Palestine, which has been one of the big elements that have allowed us to see how these technologies are used. I'm sure you will be aware of Gospel, Lavender, and other AI tools that have been used in the Palestinian genocide. They're tools created by Israeli companies, but the persecution of the civil society space in the West Bank is also done internationally. These technologies are being used to persecute political dissidents and people mobilizing against genocide in Europe, in the US, in Latin America, or in countries like Jordan, where, in theory, even if it's a state that could feel close to the Palestinian people, it's one of the states that is persecuting anyone that is mobilizing against genocide and to the policy of the state with regards to this genocide. As I was saying, in the technology, the tech sector and surveillance technologies are completely deregulated and they're operating in a context where they're being used under the justification of new laws. We see that throughout the region, governments are adopting laws against cybercrime, laws on cybersecurity, which in theory would seem a progress because they are used to allow the use of these technologies to violate rights. So insecurity is generated by the states. Anyway, this is worsening the discrimination that already existed against certain groups of population, and we'll see some cases. What these regulations do is they give the perfect excuse. There are no regulations to protect the rights that are being violated by these technologies, and they use this, but then they adopt laws as an alibi to justify the use of these technologies. Even security, with facial recognition, biometric data, it's an unlimited alibi where all other instruments to protect human rights are weakened to a great extent, especially in a context of corporate impunity, not just because there's a lack of regulation, but because corporations are violating laws constantly, and there are no guarantees for states and institutions to do public procurement with the safety that, or not, without them knowing or having a way of knowing whether these technologies are used, like Biblion, a company owned by Motorola, which has been tagged for its connivance in human rights violations in Israel, comes up time and time again because someone wants to use them in biometric technology cameras or cameras to detect behaviors. And regularly it appears in the media because they want to use them for CCTVs in the metro, in the government buildings. So even when it's been made evident what's going on with these companies, it's a technology that is growing and expanding in our context. There are no other companies doing this, and they always call on the same companies that have been proven to either be in connivance with the violation of human rights or directly participating in such violations. In a colonial context, it's mostly companies from the global north. Technology is developed in the global north, tested on vulnerable sectors of the population, whether it's Palestinian people or migrants on the European borders or in our Global South, the migrant and racialized people living in our countries. And at a later stage, this technology is being used by growingly authoritarian governments in MWAP, in Mashrek. These are regimes that are already committing human rights violation, and this technology enables these violations, even if the company is saying they're only selling software to states and then they don't know how states use this software. But we can't pretend that nobody knows anything. In any case, companies say they don't have the information as to what governments do with their technology when this information is publicly available and it's been backed. And in the Mediterranean region, it's a region with openness to technology, thanks to the Arab Springs, through social media, access to the internet. They use social media to reclaim social, civil, political rights. And in this region, we see that with the repression against the Arab Spring and the rise of authoritarian regimes, not only have they closed down on this civil society space and social media, but the reaction has been much greater. There's been a political reaction, a military reaction, and a reaction in terms of limiting digital rights and access. In the case of Palestine, obviously it's the most serious case. It's a test lab for new weapons and technologies on civil populations. They're leaders in exporting technologies for repression, as our colleague said, and in Gaza, not only have they deployed these AI tools that have been able to magnify the victims, getting them out of their homes, tricking them to believe that there are safe zones, or using civilians or targeting civilians as if they were military targets. It's generated to a much larger scale of human destruction, and they've basically done away with all of the civil and political rights in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Entire areas have been left incommunicated. And this has also led to extreme surveillance, not just of people in the Gaza Strip, but also in West Bank, especially activists, where after going to a demonstration, you get threatening messages or you're censored on social media because you've used words related to Palestine. There's a surveillance. I mean, there's already a surveillance through a massive use of CCTV and checkpoints in East Jerusalem. The level of control of collective life of the population is extreme, and to this we now have to add what has happened with genocide. The case of Palestine is an extreme case, but also in Lebanon we have the explosion of the pages, which is a truly perverse use of technology, but also the forced digital blackout of Lebanese population in villages and towns where there have been totally unjustified bombings by Israel. In the areas that have been attacked, they've also detected fake calls for the population to evacuate through social media and messaging apps to intimidate and scare the Lebanese population. And this is the more extreme example of this veer towards authoritarianism, where technology plays a central role, but it's not the only cases. They're perhaps the most extreme ones, but not the only ones. And to this, we could add the use of spy software like Predator and Pegasus. Predator is another less known spying software linked to Israel. The CEO of this Predator is Israeli, and this spying software has been used against thousands of people against people in Maghreb and Mashrek, in Western Sahara, against known activists like Aminatu Haidar, but also against journalists, political opponents in Egypt. Its use is widespread and is being used in many cases in a totally arbitrary way. We also see mass censure and the closure of blogs and websites. Egypt, since 2017, has closed down more than 600 websites on journalism, alternative journalism, civil society websites, critical media, political platform, more than 600 websites using software that is developed by a Canadian company called Samfine, which until August 2024 was owned by Francisco Parles, an investor who is also a shareholder of NS Group until 2019. So we have all these conglomerates of businesses that develop so controversial technology, end up being part of the same group and being interconnected, and all of them connected to Israel in many cases. In this case, it's a Canadian company, but still we can identify a connection to Israel. One of the most outstanding is the use of laws against cybersecurity to persecute political dissidents and also journalists that are critical with the power. This doesn't only happen in Maghreb and Maghreb, also in Europe, in Spain even. But there are extreme cases like in Tunisia, where Tunisia was one of the... How much time do I have left? 6 minutes left. Okay, so in Tunisia, after the Arab Springs, digital activism, hack labs, there are many people in hack labs that moved in social media. They gained access to the power estimates by throwing Ben Ali, but they were able to find out what software and technology had been used during Ben Ali's regime to persecute people, and they were able to change this. But we see that 15 years after this uprising or the Jasmine Revolution, all of this technological repressive architecture still stands and is still being used against judges, journalists, lawyers, LGBTI people, political opponents. To this technology, we add new technologies and new laws that justify using these technologies on the basis of security, and this all leads to an increased persecution. For instance, since the adoption of a law in 2020, 40 Facebook page administrators and bloggers have been persecuted or accused of unruly behavior or harming others, I guess, by posting their content on social media. And this repression in the name of the fight against cybercrime focuses on young people in Tunisia, young people who are living in precarious situations where they have a lack of job opportunities. They were the catalyzers of important mobilizations during the Arab Spring, and they continue to mobilize university graduates who have no jobs. I mean, there's a lot of mobilization. And one of the best known cases is that of a student who was the administrator of a Facebook page where they posted on police violence against his neighbors. It's a working class neighborhood in Tunis, the capital. He was arrested in 2022. Their computer and phone was taken away to extract data, and they are facing 12 years of imprisonment, in theory, for sharing fake news, which is one of the charges included in this law against cybercrime. Sharing fake news is a concept that is completely arbitrary and abstract and could be used for anything that may be critical against the government. And it's not something that it's exclusive to areas where there are authoritarian regimes. There's also fake news, but here in Western countries. And I'd like to finish off by talking against abuse on social media, against activist women, journalist women, LGBT people who are criticized or attacked because of their sexual orientation, because of being women in Morocco. We've even seen women being accused of illegal abortion or of sexual assault that have never been proven. That is to undermine the images. And in the case of LGBTI population, we see how throughout the region they use, well, there's obviously attacks on social media. They publish private information on the sexual orientation and gender identity of these people. One, to for digital abuse, but also it's then used in court to present charges, and the dating apps, date apps to meet people are also used to somehow draw in these people and create a trap for them to fall in. And then they use digital software to get information out of their smartphones to prove that these people are breaching moral laws on morality. So to wrap up, what we see is it's a clear case where these technologies are being used against vulnerable population groups with no regulation. And we see how these technologies are tested here, but sooner or later they're also used here against migrants, against racialized population, against political dissidents, or ultimately against anyone living here in our countries. Thank you. Thank you so much. I said she was a great journalist. Thank you very much. Really interesting. And we have just a few minutes in case anyone has any comments. We have Lau, who is online, and we have Tina and Nora with us here in the room, in case anyone has any comments, any questions. Do we have any online comments, questions, or here in the room? People have kept stuck here right until the end. It's admirable. As I was saying, we've touched on many issues and hot topics. And CTO certification, it's all been really interesting. So this is actually the 10th edition of the Mobile Social Congress. Thanks to all participants, speakers, those of us who have followed here in the room and online. There have been some questions, all of them really interesting. Thanks to our collaborators and our friends who have made this possible, all the reflection on the electronics industry. Thanks to the City Council of Barcelona, the Catalan Development Corporation Agency, Som Connexió and Pangea, for organizing this edition of the Mobile Social Congress. Importantly, also thanks to the team of interpreters and streaming, the technical team at CETEM and CCCB, who is hosting us. It's a house of culture. Also thanks to Intermedia, who've given a hand, I think, with the logistics. And well, as you know, this event was organized by the campaign Just Electronics by CETEM Catalunya. If you'd like to find out more, we encourage you to visit the website of CETEM and the campaigns electronicajusta.net. Okay, so with this, we wrap up the 10th edition of the Mobile Social Congress, and two short things. You can also buy a t-shirt. We have some out here if you like it. Grab on. So that the message isn't something we just hear, but it is also visual. I don't know, on the exit, I think, upon exiting, I think you can buy a t-shirt, and also very importantly, for the formal closure, when you leave on the terrace, there's food and drinks. Please join us. Thank you very much. And I hope you all stay well.